So, here's our generational shift. Sonic is going open world. Instead of selectable stages broken into acts, the game features 5 pretty big open world islands filled with challenges and bosses, most of which you can approach in whatever order you feel like. But more on that in a little bit. The game also takes a much darker tone compared to the previous entries. Abandoned ancient ruins, complemented with somber melodies of the main world soundtrack, create a feeling of desolation and loneliness unusual for a Sonic game. The overall aesthetics actually pretty strongly reminded me of that movie Oblivion with Tom Cruise from a few years ago. Probably had nothing to do with the inspirations for the game, but the shared theme of triangles and vast depopulated dark deserts is kind of undeniable here. Speaking of darkness, the encounter with the first mini-boss gave me that same feeling I had watching the very early trailers of the game. It made me think of the first big fight in Dark Souls 3. And so I was like, are they going for Souls-like Sonic here or something? Sadly, the excitement was short-lived, since the pattern of this boss, just like most others really, is extremely simplistic and the fight was over very quickly. Regardless, these boss fights are the main novelty of Sonic Frontiers and are a welcome addition to the world of Sonic, as a lot of them are genuinely fun experiences with great music to boot. A super memorable one for me is the Squid. I think it might have been inspired by the Mad Hatter fight from Batman and Robin on Sega Genesis. Even the music sounds sort of reminiscent of that crazy adrenaline-pumping battle. And definitely check it out if you haven't already, it's unbelievably intense. Link in the description. Here, let's take a brief detour and say a few words about the graphics. They are pretty, but not really that impressive by today's standards. Your mileage will also vary depending on the platform you're playing, but the only serious issue I found on PC at launch is this annoying pop-in, or to be more precise, clipping. Because this is not really that pop-in where textures or objects load too slowly. This is a performance optimization, where objects that are at a certain distance are clipped from view to save computational resources. So at launch, this clipping distance is set too close to the viewer, which creates this really ugly effect. And there is no way to adjust it, at least without, hacking some files maybe somewhere, I don't know. Would be really nice if there was a slider in the options menu to tweak this setting or something, but there is none. Now back to the game design. The other part of this new open world gameplay comes in the form of mini-challenges to get certain items. These are mostly constructed of classic Sonic elements like ramps, loops, springs, and grind rails. And while initially fun, these mini-challenges are one of the problems of the game design here in my opinion. They are basically just randomly scattered across the islands, which themselves are virtually empty open plains. The idea of a grind rail suspended in thin air is not new in Sonic and might even feel natural, but when there's so many of them, you just can't shake the feeling that all of this is some sort of prototype, not an actual game. Pretty quickly the game starts to feel like a synthetic obstacle course, like you're in some kind of test stage where developers set up various gimmicks to test out the system or conduct some experiments. Maybe that's exactly what's happening here. Sega testing these new ideas for Sonic, but come on, make the whole game like that? It's fun for a little while, but you get tired of it relatively quickly. And towards the end of the game, I was avoiding mini-bosses and memory token collections as much as possible just because I couldn't look at those disembodied springs and loops anymore. Then there is the cyberspace, or the good old speed stages. I guess at this point you could say vestiges of the now seemingly deprecated previous phase of Sonic games. I wonder if Sega will actually keep them in the future, or transition to open world stuff completely somehow. I guess we'll see. The soundtrack of the cyberspace is an absolute joy. It's a marvelous collection of EDM goodness featuring a wide variety of its many subgenres. Such music might not convey a unique personality to each stage like many compositions from previous Sonic games, but it does a superb job as speed stage BGM. Too bad those stages don't really let you enjoy it. Cyberspace stages are mostly very short and not really challenging, especially for Unleashed or Generations veterans. I was able to complete most stages within just a few tries, with the exception of a couple on the last island. One of them took a bit of time to find an easy-to-miss shortcut right at the beginning, and another had too many branching alternative routes to quickly find the right one. Speaking of which, if you're stuck on a speed level trying to get an S rank and you're always just barely under that timing threshold, no sense trying to improve your technique hoping to get a better result. It virtually always just means you're not taking the optimal route, as most of these stages can be beaten much faster than the S rank time. Notable exception here is the already infamous stage 1-2, where certain skill would actually help. Lastly, I just can't overlook the fact that yet again we got to play freaking Green Hill, Chemical Plant and Sky Sanctuary over and over. It's okay to include them as little mementos in each game for the sake of the long-standing nostalgic tradition, maybe, but here, out of some 30 speed levels, 24 are visually based on exactly those 3 zones. This part of the game really needed more variety, as even the most dedicated Sonic fans are probably getting sick of Green Hill at this point. At least I know I am. So, to sum it all up, graphics are pretty. Clipping plane setting would make it even prettier, way prettier. Overall world emptiness and desolation do not feel right for Sonic, would probably work better for Shadow. Open world bosses are a great idea, which unfortunately is not fully realized here, but definitely has tons of potential for future Sonic games. Random mini obstacle courses could definitely work too, but they demand some actual level design around them, not just empty grass fields with levitating springs and blocks. Speed stages either need to be somehow integrated into the open world concept, or if kept as a separate experience, simply must have more variety and imagination put into them. Because endless iterations of Green Hill are not the answer. And let's end on a positive note. The soundtrack of this game is simply superb. The EDM part of it is definitely worth owning as an album, if you're into that kind of music, of course. Overall, I can definitely say I like this game. It's not my favorite entry in the Sonic series, but it's a solid one with a lot of promise for Sonic's future. I absolutely recommend getting it. Maybe not at full price though.